I'm really pleased to be able to speak to you today, to be sort of the one starting off the second phase about connecting the science of climate change and some of the impacts this morning to what is being done at the local scale and I guess a little national scale a little bit later. And I'm going to focus on the Southwest and focus on San Diego in particular and the efforts we've been doing there. Now, you might not think that San Diego has too much of a tough time when it comes to climate change. We have beautiful beaches and mountains and deserts, and it's a really beautiful place to live, and the quality of life because of that is really good for people, especially who love to be outdoors. But almost exactly a year ago, I was giving a talk to some decision makers on our water tour, and I was able to tell them that the 3-day forecast at the time was a traditional 3-day forecast for San Diego, which is 76, 76, and 76. This year, a year later, the forecast is 87, 83, 85 with 70% humidity. And for the first time since I've been there for almost 30 years, we had heat days. I'm from Canada originally. I'm used to snow days. But they're actually shut down a school for heat days shows that even though we have this, what is expected to be a very nice climate, this Mediterranean climate, the long-term trends are there, and we're starting to really see the effects of climate change. We see it in lots of places, including in sea level rise. This was taken just a few months ago at a conference on climate change. This is the Lloyd Beach and Tennis Club, and the waves are about to enter the meeting room. So already we're seeing these impacts. We're seeing coastal flooding issues. Water is a really big thing in San Diego, particularly drought issues. And so there is a recognition that we have some threats of climate change, and we need to act now. We need to do something about this, not only for us, but really to connect it to the future generations, to have the kids and the grandkids have the kind of life that we've been having in San Diego. So what I hope today is to leave you with some stories so that you can answer this question. The 2050 is calling, and how are you going to answer the question in your area? How are you going to present the stories that are maybe going to connect to people so you can sort of say, we are doing something in the near future. This is only 30-something years away from us right now. Now, I've been an oceanographer for almost 30 years. I teach in marine biology and environmental science. I come from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. This are 5 generations of Scrippies, as we like to call ourselves, all working in one form or another. So I clearly spent a lot of time talking about the science of climate change. But what I really have been getting more and more involved is to having dialogues outside of the science realm to talk about how we can communicate the important issues of climate change. And I had a chance about a year and a half ago to talk to some port commissioners. The Port of San Diego is a big group of people who are dealing with climate change issues. They were working on a climate action plan, and you might suspect there was some contention going on. And in fact, one of my colleagues, as a facilitator, said, I have 2 people at the either end of this debate, one who really wants to include a lot of climate change information in the strategic plan, and one who's pretty much a skeptic and isn't sure. Can we have lunch and we'll just talk about climate change? And so, of course, they don't want to have lunch together, so I meant to say I had 2 lunches. But I will tell you about the lunch with the person who was more skeptical. And it started with him putting on the table a Wall Street Journal editorial that had been signed off by 19 scientists who said global warming wasn't much of a big deal. And he said, what do you think about that? And the first thing I said to him was, what kind of scientists are they? What's their background? Look at who's saying this. Look at how this fits into the consensus of science. And it morphed to a discussion about the fact that his 10-year-old daughter knew all about climate change and was really comfortable with this fact. And he had never really had that conversation at home. It was all related to his work. And maybe more importantly, we started talking about sea level rise and coastal flooding, which is important to the port. And he was a business person who owned real estate along the port, or along the shore. And the discussion was not just about science, but really science in context. How did it connect to him as a business person, and how did it connect to him as a port commissioner about to make multi-million-dollar decisions about what we're going to do in San Diego? That lunch, many other efforts with our partners at the San Diego Foundation, with the staff at the port that's just incredible, really was impactful, because about a few months later, they unanimously passed a climate action plan. And to us, this is one of the things that we see is important. We need to talk to decision makers. We need to talk to the people who are involved and directly connected to climate change and really get across the important science components, but all the other components as well that play a role in the discussion related to climate change. This is a list of some of the great things that are already going on in San Diego. San Diego takes great pride in its leadership on action towards climate change. We are a regional leader in the Southwest. We are hoping to be in many ways a national leader as well. So as an example, 19 governments, cities, and county have done their greenhouse gas inventory, so they're prepared to deal with some of the issues. I've already started doing some mitigation that goes with reducing their greenhouse gases. At least 10 of the cities in San Diego are working on their climate action plans. Some are almost done. The city of San Diego itself is not quite done yet, but we've had 3 mayors in 4 years, and so they're still working with the political side, but their plan is there and they're working on it. The city of Chula Vista, which is a border city, has just been nationally recognized as a really forward-thinking city. They have a Republican mayor who's working in an area that is right at the border. They have a plan to deal with sea level rise. They have a plan to deal with coastal flooding. They're educating their children, the citizens. They have open sessions to talk about it. They have one of the most sustainable plans in San Diego. So the city itself is very active. The port, as I mentioned, passed its climate action plan. But in addition to that, the port has installed some new ways of reducing air pollution from the ships that dock there. The port is working with the cities around San Diego Bay to plan for sea level rise and coastal flooding. SANDAG, which is the San Diego Association of Governments, has a sustainable community plan to talk a lot about driving. We're going to hear more about transportation issues in a little bit. Because in California, as you might expect, it's a very big car culture. We spend a lot of time driving. And they're really trying to find a way to connect all the communities around. How can we do better, drive less, and really make that part of our plan to adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change? The universities around San Diego, we have 5 major universities. A lot of them are either at the forefront of the science and the study of climate change, or in the innovations from the business side and the technology side. I'm going to brag a little bit about USD. USD is one of the 10 most beautiful campuses in the country. We're proud to say that. I meant we used to use a lot of water to make it look so nice. In the last 5 years, we reduced our water usage. Now we're saving close to 40 million gallons per year by changing it. So we still kept a beautiful campus, but we're really thinking ahead. How do we change our landscaping to deal with water issues? We put solar on campus, and you can't see it because we have beautiful Spanish Renaissance architecture, but we still have 5,000 solar panels. So the universities are doing that. UCSD is the same way. So we have a lot of innovation going on in San Diego that is supporting the efforts that are going on in the cities and the other groups. And one of the more recent groups is the Climate Collaborative, which is actually a partnership between public agencies, the cities, academia, government, and many of the other groups in town to really look at comprehensive planning as well as exchange of information. So there's several groups that are working to make sure that the information passed one person to the other, that we're not reinventing the wheel, and then we're really thinking about San Diego as a region and what we can do to be better prepared to deal with the impacts. Our group, Climate Education Partners, is one of 6 groups funded nationally from the National Science Foundation. Their groups are working on climate change education in different ways. Ours is the only one focused on working with decision makers. We decided we really needed to work with the people who are the CEOs, the government officials that are in charge, the nonprofit groups, to work with the people we would consider key influentials that can make a difference pretty much on the short term in San Diego. It's also a non-traditional grouping that usually gets funded by the National Science Foundation. You would expect, well, there's a bunch of scientists that are involved, and there are. There's climate scientists and oceanographers from my department. There's scientists from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. But we also have social psychologists and behavioral psychologists from Cal State San Marcos and UC San Francisco. We have a major community group in the San Diego Foundation. We have people who work in the policy sphere. And we have a strategic communication team that works with us. The idea being that the communication we do about climate change has got to get away from just giving you more and more scientific information, and also having to give it to you in a different way so you can engage in your sphere. And for newspaper editors and reporters, you have a different audience, and we need to make sure that we get the material across for you to be able to pass it on to the audience that you want to reach. We've done 2 public opinion surveys in the last 4 years, and in San Diego, the people agree. I know that's kind of different from some of the places where you are. 84% of San Diegans are concerned about climate change. And they are deeply concerned, and particularly concerned for future generations. If we asked the question, what concerns you the most, it was children and future generations as the top 2 responses. It then went on to some components related to other aspects of their life, but this is what resonated the most. We also did some work with the San Diego Foundation in looking at how the connection between businesses and climate change. We heard about that this morning. And in fact, in San Diego, there's 77% of voters agree that we can have a strong economy and a healthy environment at the same time. And it's really not a conflict between the two, but really an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get involved in clean tech, to get involved in biotech, which San Diego is one of the hubs. We're getting involved in blue tech, that is all the people working in the maritime sphere. So there's a lot of energy in town, no pun intended, there's a lot of energy in town for this to get done. And it's really a situation where the people are on board. By the way, this is across the political spectrum. This is across the gender spectrum. It's across cultural spectrum. 26% of our respondents are Hispanic, which is sort of reflects what the population is in San Diego. So this is a strong response to something that we want to get done and we can continue to do. We've also, as part of our project, interviewed 150 of the who's who of San Diego. The top politicians, the top CEOs, the people in charge of nonprofits, across the political spectrum, across multiple sectors. We've interviewed emerging leaders, 25 to 40-year-olds. We've interviewed very experienced leaders that have been doing this for 30 or 40 years. We've learned a lot of things, but there's really two fascinating facts that I want to share with you to connect to what we've been doing to work more closely with them. When we asked them how they connected to climate change, 90% of them said that they were personally concerned about climate change. And they were doing something about it. They're driving hybrid cars or electric cars. They've got solar panels, they're recycling, they've reduced their water usage. And it didn't matter where they fit in the political debate of climate change, they themselves personally felt that something had to be done. However, 90% did not think their peers were concerned. This is now the fourth topic we don't share in public. Sex, politics, religion, and now we don't talk about climate change either. And so even though they were doing something and they wanted to do something, and in some cases they were doing something with their company or their university or the public health system, they really didn't think that there was a dialogue going on. And so we've taken this on. This is one of the big components of our project, is how do we get leaders to talk to each other and leaders to talk to the general public to show that this is something that's really critical to San Diego. So I'm going to change the question and say what we're doing now is San Diego 2050 is calling How Will We Answer? And that is going to be connected to this report that it just was completed in May. I have some copies in the back if you want to bring them, take them with you. This is an innovative approach to talk to leaders. It's a report that was designed to provide leaders with the type of information they need to be able to make informed decisions about climate change and to be able to talk to their colleagues about it as well. These are all recognizable figures in San Diego. People that would look at this would know that these are across the board the group of people that mean something to the economy and to the life in San Diego County. The approach is a little different. It includes climate science at the very top end. The Scripps Institution of Oceanography and many other universities, we had subgroups that focused especially on local and regional climate change impacts. So we have the top of the line science data all the way up to 2012 or 2013 that's included in this. But we've also simplified it a little bit and used infographics to get the material across, and not so many of the very complicated graphs. So you have access to those if you want in connecting to the website related to our report. We've also included a social psychology perspective. A lot of the way we frame the messaging and the way we talk about it is to connect to ways that people deal with climate change or any environmental issue, or any issue for that matter at all. They can do something about it. I am someone who feels that this is important, and in fact, I deeply believe that this is important. And this matches some of this 90% of them being concerned and having this as part of their values, that they want to do something about it. And so we're really framing it and using that messaging to get the points across. We also have input directly from and engagement from our community leaders. These key influentials, they're part of the report. They're quoted in the report. They are participating with us in our activities. And so it's not just the scientists talking at the front of the room. It's really a team of people, including the key influentials themselves, talking to their peers. And it's a message of hope. And we hear about all the depressing parts of climate change and the reality of what's happening. But we end each of the sections with opportunities for leaders, things that you can do as an individual, things that you can do as the leader of your community, the leader of your corporation. And so it really is designed to get you to think about all the good things that can occur if we prepare and take care of the situation. This, just to show you the framing of the page, I'm going to get to the details a little bit later. This is the science page, and this is on water, one of our major resources. And so the page is organized by having bullet points that summarize the key science. If you need to go more, then you go to the website, and all the scientific papers and the data that represents it is there for you. So if you want the graphs, they're there. If you want just the bullet points, then you can use the bullet points. We have a word from the scientists, so each of the areas of impact are explained a little bit more by a key scientist in that field. And then we have infographics that can be used very simply to explain some of the key components. For example, for this one, we'd be using an example like this, which explains to people that our water issue is not just a local issue, but a regional issue. Snowpack, which is not something you think about if you live in San Diego, is really important, because if there's no snow up in the Sierras, we don't get enough water coming down the rivers to get to San Diego. And so that discussion is part of it. The fact that we're seeing a difference in storms. We heard a lot about water this morning. If you look at all the maps, I know it focused a lot on the center part of the country because many of you are from that. I kept looking on the left side of the maps. it's going to get drier already, and our storms are expected to be more unpredictable. So fewer storms, but much bigger ones, which means we'll have periods of drought and massive periods of flooding. And so this is an effect that is both very local and also thinking about it from the regional perspective. This page on the science is balanced on the other side with words from key influentials connected to water. This is Maureen Stapleton, who's the general manager of the San Diego County Water Authority. They're another example of people taking the lead on handling the water issues in San Diego. And so Maureen's participated in our events. She's there saying how important it is for us to prepare, to come up with new water sources, to deal with the issues coming across. And this is Julie Walker, who's the president of the San Diego County Farm Bureau. And we're bringing in the agriculture perspective. In San Diego, there's a lot of small-scale agriculture and organic farming. And so Julie now is not only the portal to the farmers, because they will probably respond a lot better to her talking to them than to me, but she's also a person who wants to bring them on board, engage them in our activities. And so we're able to discuss the impacts of water on farms. As a matter of fact, you may have either more expensive or fewer avocados, because that's one of the things they have to think about now. Avocado is a very water-intensive crop. It doesn't deal well with extra temperatures, and so it's hotter and it's less water. We may have more wine to serve, but we may have less avocados to go with it. But this is something that the farmers are deeply connected to and want to know more on how they can pass that message across. So we also do place-based education. So rather than just sit in a room like this and talk to you about what we should do, we take the leaders to the area themselves. This was one of our water tours that we did a year ago. We brought them to the dam. We showed them what the San Diego County Water Authority is doing. They saw some of the things that are going on. It sort of puts that real picture to it. It becomes an engineering story, it becomes an energy story, but it becomes a real life. It's not just me telling you that there's less water. You're actually seeing where the reservoirs are and what's going on at the reservoir itself. I want to end with one last story that has less to do with what's in the report, but what happens when we can get the key influentials together, breaking that boundary of not talking to your peers. In putting the report together and talking about the impacts of temperature, we wanted to connect it to transportation. And so we had Ron Roberts, who's the county supervisor and is on the Air Quality Control Board. Elise Lowe, who's part of Circulate San Diego to do alternative transportation modes. And Paul Jablonski, who's the CFO of the Metropolitan Transport District. People who will not talk to each other in some cases, but they're all thinking about how this could be done. And so we did the photo shoot and we did a video, and they had an hour to talk to each other. And they started having a conversation about climate change that was different from what they had in the past. And in fact, the people who were a little bit more skeptical were realizing that there is a place where alternative transportation and planning for MTS and cleaning up the air all sort of fit together, and normally they wouldn't be in the same place, and now they actually got to do that. And so we're hoping to do more of those events where we get the leaders together in the same space to sort of break that wall of we don't talk about climate change to our peers. So I hope you have three messages that came out of this. One is that San Diego is impacted by climate change. This is the fires that occurred in May. By the way, our fires are normally in October. So this was something that hit us right away, and it's another one of the major impacts that we have to deal with in San Diego County. So there are things changing, and we need to prepare for it right away and do something about it. They're only going to do this if we work together. We have to work together not only across sectors, but across the divides that we typically have between science and non-science, between science and social sciences and communication. Get everybody together on the same page to have a shared message to get that across. And it's always good to finish with kids. It's really important to do this. Everybody has at some point, or will have kids or grandkids. This really is a synergy that works no matter who you are, that people really feel about preparing for the future in a relatively short-term future. And so it's important for the next generations. If you want more information, I've included our major webpage, which is sandiego.edu climate, a direct link to the webpage that has the report, and you can download a PDF in English or in Spanish, by the way, so because we have a large Latino population in San Diego County and across the border. And then the San Diego Climate Collaborative will give you an idea of what can be done with this mixing of public and private and academia all together. And the San Diego Foundation, which is one of our major partners in the climate education partners, also has its own climate initiative working a lot with insurances, for example, and they're a big player at the community level for climate change. Thank you.